Here we go with yet another Jiffy and Stubbsy podcast. Jonathan Davis, star of Rugby League, star of Rugby Union, broadcasting hero, is in South Wales. I'm in Southwest London. Of course, we have a special guest joining us today. But just to keep things absolutely to the norm, Jiffy, all well, all okay, everything going?
Yeah, all game. Yeah, same as usual. Just waiting for another announcement of the First Minister tomorrow, so we can catch up with the rest of the UK. Yeah, it's been lucky. The weather's been good. Beaches have been quite busy down here. But yeah, as normal as it can be, right? So just looking forward to this podcast now, catching up with my old mate.
Absolutely. Over the course of the podcast, Jiffy, when you think back, just the mood and the style and the water that's flown under the bridges since we started talking sort of midweek, every week. Well, the unprecedented times. Thank you to our very special guest for joining us today, leading commentator Andrew Cotter joins us. Andrew, I know you two know each other very well from working together. Thank you for joining us today. Just in a way, highlighting what I said then. Strange times, unprecedented times.
Yeah, very, very strange. In fact, it all sort of kicked off in terms of lockdown and sort of my job falling apart just before Scotland-Wales, or Wales-Scotland, because I was about to head down to Cardiff to work with Jiffy on. So it was Friday the 13th of March, and that was the day that everything kind of crumbled. Because just after the message came in from our editor that now the game's gone, don't bother coming down, and I thought, well, I've done some notes. Do I still get paid? But at the same time, it was the Masters went. An email came in from the Masters and said that we're not going to be, and then the London Marathon went that day, and then within a couple of weeks, the Olympics, Wimbledon, the Open Championship, they're all gone. So
are you busking anywhere now then?
Yeah, well, but that's how the silliness of dog commentary came about, because it was, what do you do? Well, what do you do when you're a commentator without sport to commentate on? So it's just, but you're right, right? It's such a strange time, and you go throughout your days and you sort of get used to things and get into a rhythm, but then every now and again you check yourself and go, is this really happening? This is bizarre. So, but it's just something we have to get through.
And I think it'll be interesting because it's the sport looks like it'll be the last thing to come back really with the audiences, but I saw when the Scotland game was cancelled. It was cancelled very late. I think it was on the Friday. Half of Scotland were in Cardiff anyway. So they came down to party, and they did party because the official lockdown had started a week later, didn't it?
Yeah, and then that was obviously the same day as Cheltenham was going on in full swing, and the pictures of that. And it seems strange now to think of that, and to even think of the fact that there might have been 70,000 inside the Principality Stadium in Cardiff. So, and you'll know, Ray, from football experience, how weird that was to see the restart of football. I was fascinated to watch a bit of it. The game that Sky, or the games that Sky were showing, or certainly one that I saw a bit of, where they had piped in like canned laughter. They had piped in stadium noise, so they were playing that out, which seemed really weird. I thought one of the perhaps not good experiences of watching football like that without a crowd would be you could hear what the players are saying. You can hear everything. You can hear the cries from the coaches and the sidelines and everything, but they just played out this. I don't know where they got this stadium noise from, some random game. But you can't then ramp it up when someone scores a goal or when something contentious happens. So that might have been commentary from Argentina against the All Blacks rugby or something like that.
I'll tell you what it was. I watched a bit of the Bundesliga, and there was no atmosphere whatsoever. But the first thing I watched then was the Australian Rugby League, and they did it. I think they were the first ones to do that. So I don't know how they're doing it, whether they pipe it into the stadium or it's just on the television show. But yeah, it would have been. We discussed this before. It would have been interesting to listen to the players. We discussed this with Nigel Owens, but I'm not sure if the players are allowed that because they can't stop kind of doing what they're doing straight away, and everything would have come up over the referee's mic, and I think there would have been serious issues then.
But I think there was an option because they're playing in the effects, in the production, the Sky production. But I think there's an option on some channels when you're watching to have it with or without the artificial crowd noise. So anyway, the very idea that we're talking about this, isn't it bizarre? Isn't it strange?
I know, not the game.
It's so strange. But football, Ray, getting back to playing, and golf is getting back to some play, but these big events that I mentioned, and the Masters being played in November, the Olympics, they're talking about it perhaps not even happening now in 2021. And Wimbledon and the Open Championship were very quick to call theirs off. So it's amazing how different sports are getting back at different times and sort of seem to have different pressures to get back to playing.
It's all different. It's money pressures, I think. A lot of it is financial pressures, and they'll try and get back and stop hemorrhaging the money.
Yeah, I feel as though there's still we would never have guessed where we are turn of the year to where we are now. So I think it's I think it's right and proper to make plans. You have to have a plan ready to go, but who would ever know what it's going to be like when we get to the turn of the year? And as Andrew, as you say, the Olympics to be sorted out. There's the major football championships, Euro 2020-21 now has to be played. So I'm not saying this in critical terms in any shape or form, but there is an awful lot to be sorted out, and there is an awful lot of uncertainty still to go. And Jiffy, when we think about the fact that we've been chatting each week and been joined by some terrific guests, I sort of think it really represents the fact the way everyone has been thinking. And Andrew, the success of your two dogs as online stars, in a way, don't you think that really reflects the fact that we were all searching for
anything?
You know what I'm saying? Is
yeah, no, absolutely.
Everybody was just. It was a strange world. It was a very strange world, and we have all reacted in different ways. I have to say, I think there is untold impact of the lockdown in terms of what the effect it's had on all of us and so many people that we don't know yet.
Oh no, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. The hardest part of it all is the mental impact of it, because you people ask you how you are. You used to say how are you, and it didn't mean anything. Now it really does. So people say, well, I'm okay, and they're not. They might be on the surface okay, but everybody's got stresses and strains. This sort of claustrophobia and everything, it feels that it's closing in, and when you're seeing the same backdrop in the same four walls every day, even if you can get out, you haven't got holidays that you can go on. You haven't got, I would travel a lot for work, and it's just going to different events. This week would be Wimbledon. Next couple of weeks' time, Wimbledon will be starting this week. It's Queen's. Then you move on to the Open. It's the same events every year, but it's a different environment, and it's just that getting out and working and seeing different people. And so it's there's a huge psychological impact, and that's what they're talking about, the schools at the moment, how important it is, not for the learning, but for the psychology of children to be able to meet other children and mix and have fun. And so I think there is untold unseen damage that is being done at the moment.
Yeah, it's the psychology of the whole thing. I guess, did the reaction to Olive and Mable, did that stretch from all around the world? Were you getting contacted from people?
I mean, it's the whole thing. When you talk about this being a strange time, and the reaction to that has been the strangest thing, and very difficult. At times, genuinely very difficult to deal with, because for a start, I had an email address on my Twitter account, which in the past would have been for, well, exactly, but it was for in the past, if anyone wants to contact me to offer me work as a freelance broadcaster, you stick it out there and hope that somebody might get in touch. And then when you put this out, I mean, message-wise on Twitter, each video brought in about 10, 15,000 messages. And email-wise, I was getting about 200 emails a day to that account. And I mean, ranging from everything from, at the very top, there would be one maybe offer of employment that you might consider, down to some well-meaning but total gibberish from people just say, but what I would say is every single message and every single email was nice and polite, and that's amazing on Twitter in itself.
Because when we work together, me and Cotter, because I enjoy working with him, we'll sit down, and then as soon as the game is over,
it's awful.
We'll go. Oh, let's see what's going on Twitter then.
And that's a terrible way to be, isn't it?
It is.
For us to be reacting to that and going, oh, I hope that somebody who I've never met and never am going to meet, I hope that they appreciated that commentary. Let's see what they thought, these strangers. Oh, they didn't like that bit that I said. What? But it affects you, and why does it matter? So the dog thing, I mean, it was so positive, but then there were so many emails of people just saying, could you commentate on my dogs, my hamsters, my cats? And they would send 3-minute videos and say, and I mean, there's a hugely negative side to it, because it does feel totally overwhelming, and you can't answer all the emails or all the messages. You can hardly answer any of them. Some of them are quite heart-wrenching, about, they've been having, but at the same time, there were lots of messages that came in that said, I've been having a crappy time at work today, and it's been terrible for a while, or we're having a tough time or whatever, and I watched this video for 90 seconds and I laughed, so thank you for that. And I don't mean that in sort of, whoa, I'm brilliant kind of way, but it genuinely, for Twitter, it is such a horrible place at times, so to see it in that light was something different.
We're slightly different, right? I get aggressive, and then Andrew worries about things like that.
You and Brian Moore get quite aggressive with people. You just respond. I can't. I don't know. I don't like confrontation, so I silently fume about it and then get a bit sad.
So, but it's out. I was looking at you. Started in radio, Andrew, right? But did you envisage like doing what you're doing now from an early age, or what were your plans when you left school?
Not at all. I mean, and I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left school, or indeed when I left university. I mean, there are certain people who I get, occasionally get messages in amongst the people asking me to commentate on domestic animals. I get certain messages from people saying, "Oh, I want to get into sports broadcasting." And Ray have had the same. How do I go about that? My first answer nowadays is there is no. I don't know. There is no one direct way into it. For a start, things have changed so much in the landscape of broadcasting that, whereas 10 years ago I would have said, well, get onto a local paper and then into local radio. That's what I did eventually. But nowadays I'd say, you know what, set up a YouTube channel or get yourself on and set up your own platform and then start doing stuff there, because then you might get an audience on its own there, or at the very least you could send that off as a demo to people within more established platforms. So, but to answer your question, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I'm always a little bit wary of people who say when they're very, very young, I want to be a broadcaster, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I'm far more comfortable with people who say, I don't know, and then they eventually find their way into something, having done lots of different things. And don't go to university or college if you're going to do that. Don't necessarily go with one specific thing in mind. Yes, if you're going to study medicine or if you're going to study engineering, but if you're going, there's nothing wrong with a degree. I did a sort of general arts degree in French and philosophy, qualifies you for absolutely sod all. But what it does is it gets you. The university is just that transition from childhood to adult life, and it makes you stand on your own 2 feet a bit better, and it just prepares you for the adult world. The fact is, I didn't know what I wanted to do as a job. Worked as a waiter for a year after graduating, and then
Well, you'd have been good at that.
I was terrible.
Your social skills at the table.
It was a well-known. I was terrible. I hated it. It was a well-known restaurant in Glasgow, Regano. It's still quite a fashionable restaurant. So it was a media hangout. It was where sports people get. So I do remember spilling glass of champagne over Frank McAvenny. Gaza was at Rangers at the time. And, we laughed at the time, but now, seeing the way that Gaza is, you think, it's pretty sad. But he was in, after a game, he would be there and he was just,
Andrew, I absolutely agree with that. When being in the company of Paul was always, it was fantastic. But there's always a little bit of a danger. You end up feeling complicit because you're sort of encouraging what is going to end up in tears. But great company. Andrew, who are the, I know in terms of, for broadcasters, who were the commentators that caught your ear as you were growing up? Because I think those voices, I think it's very generational, but I think those voices absolutely stick with you forever and ever.
Totally.
David Coleman doing the 100 meters of the Olympics. that sticks with me. Motti doing football, Bill McLaren doing rugby.
Yeah.
Nowadays, there are so many more
That's the problem. Yes, that's it. Yeah.
So many more. But if you're of a generation, there are certain voices that you never forget.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned them there because I grew up watching three main sports I would watch and be really passionate about watching were golf, rugby, and athletics. And so David Coleman athletics, Peter Alice in golf, and Bill in rugby. And as you say, they were the voices of those sports because the BBC had almost everything, and there wasn't that much sport on television, you know. And if you look back at it now, so it was such an appointment to view, and you sat down and you watched it, and this person, this voice accompanied you watching that sport. Whereas now, I'll watch this channel or that channel or this channel, and there might be 3 or 4 commentators at least on that channel, that channel, and that channel. So there are so many voices of sport, but they will never come to be identified with those sports in the same way that Coleman or McLaren or Peter Alice
I'm smiling, Andrew. I'm smiling because I can't quite imagine any of that trio of expert broadcasters.
Don't say doing dog commentary.
I was going to say, I can't quite imagine them running to Twitter afterwards to see what people have been saying about them.
Oh, Coleman would have. Coleman would have, and he'd be so angry.
What a fantastic script that would be for David going through his Twitter feed after a commentary. That would.
Oh, come on! Look what at Chump Face has said about my 100 meters commentary. I'm so angry. No, I could say you're right. I mean, it is absurd to think about, and a much lovelier time when you could just do your commentary and not worry about what's. And you could probably still do that if you're sensible, but it's very difficult if you're on Twitter to try and ignore it. But I mean, as you said, different generation and different styles of commentary to most of the commentary we have now. I mean, Jiffy worked with Bill many times, and Bill was the loveliest man, but he was totally immersed in rugby as well.
Yeah,
and he had, you know, we all are slightly. I mean, I do a lot of sports, and what I end up doing is compartmentalizing. You know, one week I'll be doing athletics, and then the next week you do. So during the Six Nations, for example, during one of the off weekends, it's usually World Indoors or European Indoors. So that week you're doing athletics. Then next week you're doing, Scotland against England in the Six Nations. So you've got to focus on that for that week and then on to that for the next week. Whereas Bill he lived and breathed rugby. He was a rugby man through and through from Hawick. And his notes were, I mean, my notes are pretty comprehensive, but his notes were just astonishing. And He was a totally different type of broadcaster. He had that lovely Borders accent. He had wonderful phrasing and homespun sort of phraseology, and it was a very charming and warm commentary from a sort of time that we look back at as being charming and warm and slower paced. That might not be the case. We've all got nostalgia and rose-tinted spectacles about these things, but he was so easy to listen to, which I think is the first thing that a commentator has to be.
But it's just changed now because people, the analysis is different. You have to be slightly critical, and I don't think that would have sat very comfortable with Bill. He just said it. He just beautiful tone to his voice and beautiful sayings, and I take the mickey out of Cotter. I call him young Bill, which he doesn't like. But I think his voice is he's got an amazing voice for sport, and I love working with him, right? And then we're totally different characters, and his notes are very thorough. Where I'll turn up and I haven't even got a pen sometimes. So, but
but what you have, no, I know, but what you have, since we're in the Mutual Appreciation Society, what you have is just the brilliant ability to read and explain the game, and that's where if you're going into the finer details of commentary, that's where you try and explain the dynamics of a commentator and a co-commentator. They call them lead commentators or color commentators in America, would be the sort of the co-commentators, because I would describe and the co-commentator would explain, because I'm not there to say because I haven't got the expertise. I have some level of knowledge of all those sports, but I'm not there to explain and analyze. And what Jiffy's talking about, I was watching an old game recently because there have been so many really archive ones coming up, and you hear Bill with perhaps Bill Beaumont alongside him or whatever, and the coverage it's still brilliant because it's simple, but it's got none of the frills and bells and whistles that we have now. So there'll be none of the analysis. Bill Beaumont, lovely man, but he wouldn't be saying, right, you can see there exactly what's happened, blah, blah, blah. And the detail of preparation that people do have to go into to try and explain exactly what's happening, especially in a sport like rugby.
I think you will, Andrew will say, the commentator will say what's happening, and then I'll try to say why it's happening, and then he'll obviously highlight it in his commentary, and then I'll have to look at it very quickly and say, right, that's why that's happened, because someone's made a mistake, or something brilliant's happened. So you've got to try and work it out. So I do the two sports, League and Union, and I know it's kind of difficult sometimes jumping from one to the other, the technical laws of it. I'll say, there's a 22-meter line, there's a 20-meter line. If I say one's wrong and the other one, I'll have all letters coming in from that, those sports, right? But how do you manage with all the different sports that you do, with all the different players and the athletes? How do you cope with it?
Well, a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and I think that's what people, they say it is. You've got such a good job. You just travel around watching sport and talking about that is part of it. But what they don't see is that for 4 or 5 days beforehand, you are doing your work, especially when you're doing the Six Nations, for example. Those teams have evolved quite slowly, so you're very familiar with a lot of the players. And they're international, they're high-profile players, but you might end up doing a club game between an Italian side in Europe and a French side, and suddenly you're going, right, okay. So not a lot more prep is, you always prep thoroughly for all of them, but you know that it's going to be harder to prep for these ones. And then I would say the hardest sport to prep for is athletics, because of all the qualifying rounds and all the athletes, and you've got to have something to say about each and every one of them. It used to be the Open used to be the killer for prep, because the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you would have 155 players, and on the Thursday and Friday, when we were doing, the BBC was doing blanket coverage. So at the Open, they tee off, at 6:30 in the morning, don't finish until 9:30 at night. And we were doing coverage pretty much throughout. So you knew you would be seeing some players that they wouldn't be the most famous players in the world. And somebody might just get on a run, get to 4 under par. Suddenly they're on your TV screens and you're going, who the Dickens is this? Oh, it's somebody Dickens. So that's why you have to be able to go to your notes and say, and so there's no escape from it. You just have to do the prep. And athletics would be similar in all the preliminary rounds and early rounds. You have to have something to say about everybody. So that's the unpleasant part of the job, but it's it all pays off at the weekend or on the day when it's the sort of more fun part. But it's only fun if you've done the work.
Is it like
to ask the pair of you what you think of the World Club Championship in rugby union? I'm reading a few days ago this desire to sort the calendar out. If there's ever an opportunity to sort the calendar out, surely it is now. What do you think of this idea of like a World Club Championship?
Well, here's me giving the hospital pass to Jiffy. There we go. It's up here. You've taken up here, and Brian Lima is bearing down on your midriff now.
Yeah, you're gonna let that pass go. Just go like this. I just think, Ray, it's the international game they're going to look at, and they will. I think they've got a calendar in mind. I think they've got to try and kind of ring fence the Six Nations, purely because this has illustrated how important the Six Nations is to rugby and money, and that's the cash cow for the Northern Hemisphere. And that's where the Southern Hemisphere want to come in, because they're struggling financially. So there are times in the calendar, it might be June, it might be November, where there could be a playoff between two Southern Hemispheres. That's what they have to look at, to make money and get everyone involved in those stages. But you've got to look after the Six Nations. I think the relegation and promotion, that's another matter again. At the moment, they're just getting a calendar and getting it sorted.
I mean, it's amazing how plans might have changed given everything that's happened now, but also how tough sports are going to find it in terms of finances. And that, when you look at the Six Nations, for example, in rugby, and I was about to say QVC, the shopping channel's taken over, but it's not CVC, the venture capitalists having taken over. And so money is going to be all important, especially when sports are stretched. And, the great God, football will always survive because there's so much money in it. It's going to be pared down, but there are sports that operate on far finer margins that are going to have struggles. And I think rugby may well be one of those. So decisions will be taken within that sport based on the finances going forward that wouldn't, that a couple of years ago they wouldn't have been thinking about.
But also, Andrew, there's another point to this, because you kind of jump between the the paywall, behind the paywall to the BBC and all ITV. So you cover all broadcasting or radio as well, and you see a massive difference, don't you, when you're on behind the paywall and when you're on national television, whether it's ITV or BBC, doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
And there's a balance to all sports. Yes, they need the money, but also apart from football, they need the platform as well.
I mean, that's something we've seen over the last 20 years developing.
Yeah.
It's massive. I mean, for example, in golf, and Sky Sports do golf superbly. They give it a level of coverage and detail and analysis and technology that the BBC couldn't afford towards the end, and certainly they do it tremendously well. But still, the BBC's highlights will get far more watching than Sky's live coverage will get, and that's just the way of the world. So yes, and that's the decision that governing bodies have to take, and it's a hard one because when people are waving short-term money in front of your face, it's going to be very difficult to turn that down, and say, well, it's for the greater good of the game long-term that we keep our exposure by remaining on the BBC, because you will have all sorts of interested parties saying, no, you've got to take the money, and it's I don't know, it's very difficult, and again, there are sports like snooker, like athletics, who need that exposure far, far more as well. So, it's
tough balance.
It's such a tough balance, and the BBC is fighting all sorts of other forces as well in terms of governmental pressures and pressure on the license fee. People say, why do I have to pay this thing that I might not watch the BBC? Well, I mean, I think, and this is I do think it's very, very important to have a media company that is not, and even though people will say, well, they're favouring this party or that party, a company that is absolutely, especially in these times, a company that's just gives you facts without any prejudiced opinion about it. You look at the model in America in terms of news, and people on the right will watch Fox News, and people in the middle aren't people in the middle, people on the left will watch CNN or MSNBC, and so people are only getting their own opinions back. So what you want is something that just gives you facts down the middle, and that's why an impartial, publicly funded broadcaster, I think, is still so important.
Do you think the economic situation will give sport something to consider in regard to as the impact on the economy, as we start to feel that, whether people will rush back to buy subscriptions or not, whether for Sky, for BT, for any pay channel, it might be harder to persuade people to take the subscriptions back right now just because of the economic pressure. And so I think there are several financial equations for everyone to consider.
I don't think anyone knows at the moment, Ray. Honest to God, it's just everyone's waiting to see, back to reality, but what's reality going to be like? I don't think anyone knows, and everyone's affected. My daughter works in London in the fashion industry, and there's going to be redundancies there. So there's worry over that. And so at the moment, sport is vitally important.
We come around full circle, Jiff, uncertainty.
Yeah.
Massive uncertainty and everything.
For the the Joe Blogs, it's very difficult, and the financial pressure on them. Only they will know, because every individual case is different. So I going back to sport, and when we meet up, and I enjoy the Friday night, right, when the rugby boys meet up, and say we're in Paris or Edinburgh or Cardiff, and we all meet and have dinner together. So you throw your Jerry, Gus Scott, your Andy Nick, here used to be Keith or Paul O'Connell, right, and then yourself or Eddie and Moro's usually there. We have a brilliant laugh, and we have dinner and a good catch up. Are all sports similar or different?
Yeah, I mean, you're being very kind to me in suggesting that I'm sociable in any way at all. So as I drink my orange juice,
I try to sit next door to him because he's different.
It's
great question.
I think the trips used to be. I think they used to be more fun. Again, that's perhaps nostalgia talking, but we used to go out. I mean, I would go out on the Thursday to games, because you go then to training or captain's run on the Friday, but there's no point in that anymore. You just don't see it. They don't let you see anything anyway. And the trips used to, I really enjoy the least enjoyable part of the job is all the prep. The most enjoyable part, I suppose, is still doing the commentary itself, but very close to it is being in that place and enjoying not enjoying the travel, because the travel's horrendous. Everybody knows airports and planes and whatever it might be, that part of it is just awful. But once you're in the place, that part of it's very, very enjoyable. Once you get into a rhythm, and it might be you end up staying in for example, the Olympics, I'll be billeted with the athletics team, and so every night, you come back late finishes at the athletics. You'd be finishing about 11 o'clock at night and getting back and just trying to find somewhere to eat, but then sitting down and just relaxing with people who are good company, like Steve Cram is great company, and Paula Radcliffe, and we'd sit there and just decompress. And those are the times that you do remember the moments of commentary, but you also look back so fondly on the whole experience of just chatting with good company and enjoying the trip that way. So yeah, absolutely. I think so. And golf provided some brilliant times, because Peter Allis is, and some people say, oh, Peter's outdated. And certainly, there'll be people who watch golf now who think, who is this dinosaur? But he is brilliant company. He is, as you can imagine, he's got so many stories to tell. And Ken Brown as well. And I think the golf trips probably would, because we're there for much longer than the rugby. Rugby, you do kind of drop in. You'll have one Friday night, maybe. I don't even go to that anymore because I'm so antisocial. But, the golf, you're there for a week.
That was before social distance, said he was antisocial.
Well, I'll tell you, the exactly. Everyone's just come around to my way of thinking now. But the Masters, for example. So you're staying in rented houses at the Masters or the Open. And so you're living in the pockets of these people, and you might go round to the house where Peter and Ken are staying one night, or they might come around to yours, whatever. And just the best times. And these are the times that, in 30 years' time, when I'm looking back at it all, if I'm not sort of doolally with dogs, 20 dogs, that's what I'll remember. Those are the times I remember.
That'll be it. All the work you've done, every sport you've covered, you will be remembered for the dogs.
Jiffy, God, that's it, isn't
it? Jiffy, time is against us, because time is against us. Are Olive and Mable, are they back? Sorry, are they back?
No, hang on a second. I didn't realise this was going to. So if I were to show Olive and Mable to you, they've come in from a walk, so they'll be quite tired and reluctant to come in. But the thing in our favour here is that this is where I keep the dog food, this room, so they may well come in. But I didn't realise this was being filmed, so I'm almost in like pajamas. That's how seriously I'm taking lockdown. It's 10:30 on a morning. Hang on a second. I'm going to have to call for them now. I'm wearing slippers and everything.
Oh, don't worry.
The figures for this Jiffy are now going through the roof.
I know. I got to ask him a couple more questions before we finish. Okay, we've got a couple of time.
Hang on a second. There she is. There's Olive.
Yeah. Look at
Mable trailing behind. They're actually wearing their toweling robes. They're like me in the dressing gowns because they come in and it's been so wet.
The real lockdown stars. Jiffy, ask your questions, because I know Andrew's got things to do. We've got to get off. So.
I know. And so, you're so highly regarded.
Oh.
He does. He's done so many Q&As, right? And going back to the golf, I kind of pinch myself. I'm sat there doing the Q&A. Andrew's leading it, and then I've got Tim Henman to my left, and then Tom Watson to my right. Yeah, I am like in heaven. Just listen to those two, and then listen. And my stories about intimidation. You can imagine intimidation in rugby is slightly different to tennis and golf. But that's what's brilliant about sport. They enjoyed my stories, I enjoyed them. So, but Andrew always takes a mickey out of Colin Montgomery.
I take the mickey out of everyone. I think first and foremost, I take the mickey out myself. That's what one thing I can't abide in people is the inability to take the mickey out themselves, to put themselves down. Self-deprecation is a great humour, and you see it. You see it a lot in the UK. You might not see it quite so much in the United States, where they don't quite get it. If I stand up in the United States and say, "Hello there, my name's Andrew Cotter, and I am a clown," and they'll go, "What was this guy? What was this guy? He is so negative."
But I know he's like with Colin Montgomery. He's actually in the room when he takes a mickey out of it, and Colin loves it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Because it's the impression's not happening, not especially when I'm on screen. So,
okay.
But he does. But that's the thing about people. You see people like that. Like people will have seen Monty on the course, and he is intense, and he knows he can be a pretty unpleasant individual in competition, or certainly 20 years ago when he was really right up at the top of the game. But in an environment like that, and anybody who spends any time with him, people who get to play with him on a pro-am or on a corporate day, they say, this guy is the best company, because he doesn't mind. He'll have a laugh and he'll let you take the mickey out of him. But again, once the switch goes on in competition, he's totally different. But I totally agree.
Tim Henman's the same, isn't he?
Yeah,
Tim
exactly.
Henman is the driest, one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet in your life.
Yeah.
He is absolutely great company. So, and which sport? It's very difficult. You cover them all. Which do you regard as your sport? Because you do so many of them.
I don't anymore. I mean, the ones I started, I don't have one anymore. I started off in golf and rugby. They were my two, because rugby was big in the family. My grandfather played twice for Scotland in the 30s, so it was a rugby playing family. But I was never, despite the massive imposing figure you see before yourselves now, I was never. You've got to be, especially at school, you've got to be big and powerful to succeed at rugby.
Hang on.
Well, no, but yeah, or have the speed of a ninja. Are ninjas fast? I don't know. But anyway, a Welsh fast ninja. So have the skills and the speed that you had. So and also I was concentrating so much on golf at the time. I really wanted to be a player.
What's your handicap now? 4?
No, it's 3. But I've stopped
3,
playing completely because of my hip injury. So, which I don't like to talk about at any great length. Anyway, so my favorite sport. I think my favorite sport to play. I enjoy running as well, but again, age is catching up with me on that. But golf would have been my favorite sport growing up, but to commentate on, I think it's probably rugby and athletics, because of the atmosphere and because the crescendos. So rugby, you've got the crescendos within the match, peaks and troughs. Athletics is a sort of, every race is a gradual crescendo. You're going to have that moment, whether it's a try, whether it's someone crossing the line, whereas golf is more sort of cricket style commentary, bouncing along the bottom. You have dramatic moments, especially at the end of tournaments and in the Ryder Cup, but you don't quite get that buzz that you do in the other sports. And tennis, again, it's sort of highs and lows, and it's quite fiddly. When do I talk here? I've got to say something during the change of ends. That's when I've got to come up with something to say, and it's quite intimidating when you're alongside McEnroe or whoever it is, because I'm just terrified of him. But I would say, you look at in fact, I was watching it the other day. I just watched snippets of it because they replayed it in Wales, Scotland, 2010.
Yeah.
Because the atmosphere there at the end of that match was the greatest atmosphere I've heard at any sporting event. And, I'm Scottish, Jiffy's Welsh, but it doesn't matter. You're just caught up in the total drama of that match. And Shane Williams goes over to win. Scotland have been 10 points up with 4 minutes to go, and they lost by 7. But anyway, it was just that place as well, with the roof on, the atmosphere in there. You will not get any better in sport, and those are the kind of moments of commentary you look
and the
for.
emotions, right? When I was there with Andrew, and I'm like Scottish and Welsh, we could see what was happening. And you can see a side starting to crumble and lose control, and then the whole crowd gets behind them. Now, you can't hide the fact that, we're our nationalities. So the body language of Andrew and my body language would slowly overlap or turn over, and just to be there. And it was brilliant game. And
but you can hear it though, the body language was, but I would hope that what you can hear is just genuine excitement at Wales winning from me. And because, as you said, it was just of all the sporting events I've done, that one there just typifies the beauty of sport, because it was just incredible, and the drama and the just the wave of the crowd, because they sensed it was all happening as well. And it was it was amazing.
The flip side of that was we worked together in Rome. And I've been. So I'm glad he stayed till the end this week. Tell him that story. I was doing pitch side because I'm like cheap labour for the BBC. I do pitch side, then have to run up to co-commentate.
I was hoping we were going to get through this without mention of Rome 2013. So you know how recently on YouTube, millions of views for dogs. I'm glad of that, because it's kind of buried. If you still look up Italy Wales 2013, you'll still get the commentary. And after 3 minutes and 50 seconds, I mean, what happened was I was feeling fine 10 minutes before kickoff in the Stadio Olimpico. Then 5 minutes before, I was going, you get that really cold sweat thing, and you think, I might not be very well here. And I said to I said to Jiffy, because he'd come up from pitch side just before the anthems, I said, I'm struggling a bit here. And he sort of helped out by just doing imaginary retching motions into his hat. So anyway, then the anthems are going, and I'm going, this is actually terrible. So I was hoping that once the match started, the adrenaline would kick in and you'd somehow see off this mystery illness which had come in. And I did, as I said, it's there on YouTube, 3 minutes, 50 seconds of commentary. Tried to say Martin Castrogiovanni a couple of times, didn't even get through it. Then I thought, I'm going to have to go because this will go viral if I am violently sick on air. So you can hear the microphone going down on the table, on the desk. And I just raced down to try and find. And I would also like to stress and clear up the point at this point, because I still get contacted by Welsh fans with little poo emojis. I wasn't anything like that. I was sick. I was just sick, violently sick. Anyway, into the president's suite and beyond, and it was just awful. But the point that Jiffy makes about that is that, suddenly he was left on his own, commentating. And just going, that's a good scrum.
Most frightening experience, honest to God. I'm thinking, first of all, right, as we have a partnership, and he's looking at me, and we can't say anything to each other because he's commentating. I'm trying to fill in when he's not feeling well. He's got a flat cap, right? The flat cap comes off his head into his lap just in case, and then he just walks off. He doesn't tell me he's going. He just walks off. So I'm like this.
It was one of those things that if I thought I'd said anything, if I'd opened my mouth again, it would have been horrendous. So the director is then speaking to our floor manager saying, "Is Andrew? Where's Andrew?" And the floor manager says, "No, he's gone. He's gone."
And I'm going, I tell you, I'm looking. This is a quiet game. I thought, oh shit, I'm commentating now, so you have to just jump onto it. And you realise what a tough job it is, but good fun.
I tried to come back up at half time actually, and was just still green. So they got Shane Williams to come up and join you, and so it was just you and Shane Williams, two fleet-footed backs, going, is that a good scrum? I don't know. Who is that player? I don't know.
It was funny. It was funny.
Time has beaten us. Andrew, what's next for Oliver Mable? Is there sort of, do you have anything lined up?
Well,
TV series.
Didn't even get, well. All I'll say is mysteriously in that. But there have been a couple of very, very interesting things, but I can't say anything more. One thing I can say is there is going to be a book, which I'm writing at the moment.
Fantastic.
So that will be out in October, by which time we'll have finished it. But and by which time everyone will have forgotten all about this. But there are a couple of interesting things which hopefully will come to light in the next few months. But because I'm not going to be commentating on sports, so
crafts.
No crafts. Not doing crafts.
Andrew, when you mentioned Wimbledon before, next time we chat, because hopefully we can chat again, is John Motson doing commentary at Wimbledon with Jack Nicholson as a co-commentator for a short time. Have you heard that story?
What? No. What? So I know that Jack Nicholson has been seen at Wimbledon. I saw him. In fact, he was there for the Rafter Ivanisevic match.
Yeah. Well, we'll get Motti to come on and tell it. We'll get Motti to join us, Jiffy, and tell us. But Motti's doing commentary at Wimbledon. Jack Nicholson's a big tennis fan. Turns up alongside Motti because puts the headphones on. Motti gets more intense about talking to Jack Nicholson than doing the tennis. People in Motti's ear are saying, "Update the score, update the score," and Motti's going off and off and off about Jack Nicholson's film career. And apparently there's this moment when there's a silence and Jack Nicholson says, "Tell him the score, Johnny."
That's fantastic. Did that actually happen, or is that just a dream you had, Ray?
We'll get Motti to come on and relay the story properly.
Okay.
Andrew, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Jiffy, good to see you as ever. As always, stay safe, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Take care, both. Take care, Andrew. Good to see you, mate. And I will catch up soon.
Jiffy and Stubbsy, we hope will return another time. Take care, guys. Bye.
Cheers, Ray. Bye-bye.
And thanks for listening to Jiffy and Stubbsy. Hope you'll join us again. Please hit the subscribe button.